Hi, grade 6. So I wanted to read you this beautiful book, Muhammad by Demi, and it's really beautiful. And I couldn't really find a good video that wasn't a long documentary in 3 parts or that was too childlike so far. But if I find something, I'll send it on to you. But notice something is missing, and it's all gold. Hopefully we'll find out why as we read the book. So, Muhammad was born in Mecca in the Arabian Peninsula in the year 570 AD into a powerful and influential tribe, the Bani Hashim. Sadly, Muhammad's father died 2 months before he was born. His grandfather gave him the name Muhammad, which means often praised or praiseworthy. Following the custom of the time when he was very small, Muhammad was taken by his mother into the desert to be raised by a nurse. It was believed that growing up in the open air would make a child strong and healthy. So for the first 5 years of his life, Muhammad was raised by nurse Halima, who recognized in the child an inner beauty and greatness. Now, as soon as he could walk, Muhammad helped the desert shepherds tend their flocks of goats and sheep. He had no formal schooling and could neither read nor write, but Muhammad studied and learned from the hardworking people and the natural world around him. Muhammad's mother died when he was 6 years old, and he was taken in by his grandfather, Abdul Muttalib, who was an elder of Mecca. For 2 years, Muhammad sat at his grandfather's side, observing intently as his grandfather gave counsel to the people who came to help and advice. Abdul Muttalib loved Muhammad dearly and thought he would be a great leader one day. When Muhammad was 8 years old, Abdul Muttalib died. The boy found himself in the care of his uncle, Abu Talib, who was a merchandise trader. Muhammad drove the camels and traveled great distances with his uncle, meeting new people and seeing new places. It was on his journey to Syria that a Christian hermit named Buhaira noticed Abu Talib's caravan. He invited the travelers to join him for a meal and asked about the boy Muhammad. Buhaira told Abu Talib to take special care of Muhammad, predicting that he would become a great prophet. Young Muhammad grew tall and strong, and he was said to possess great beauty, particularly because of his deep-set black eyes and thick beard. He was quiet, wise, and deeply drawn to God, whose Arabic name is Allah. Muhammad spent much time thinking about the world around him. He was troubled by how the very rich treated the poor so badly. In business matters, people often cheated one another and did not give a fair share to those who deserved it. Because of his sincerity, sense of fairness, and honesty in conducting business, Muhammad was called Al-Amin, which means the trustworthy. People trusted Muhammad so much that they asked him to settle disputes among them. Muhammad's remarkable qualities were noticed by Khadijah, a beautiful, wealthy widow 15 years his senior. She hired Muhammad to work as her agent in trade. Muhammad proved himself so successful, kind, polite, and mature that when he was 25, Khadijah asked him to marry her. Their life together was happy, and they were blessed with 2 sons and 4 daughters. Muhammad and Khadijah were equal partners. They respected each other and always helped one another. Muhammad often went to Mount Hira, just outside Mecca, where he would sit for hours in a cave, reflecting and meditating on the mysteries of life. One night in the month of Ramadan, in the year 610, Muhammad received a revelation from God, brought by the angel Gabriel. During this night of power, Muhammad was called upon to be God's messengers, to make known God's will to the whole of humanity, and to show the way to human dignity, progress, and real happiness. The angel Gabriel squeezed Muhammad tightly. "Recite," he said to Muhammad. "What should I recite?" Muhammad asked. "Recite," Gabriel repeated, and for a third time recite. And under this inspiration, Muhammad recited, "In the name of the Lord who created the human being from a clot of blood. The Lord is most bounteous, who teaches by the pen, who teaches the human being that which he did not know." Thus were revealed to Muhammad the first verses of the Quran, the eternal and infallible word of God, the holy book of the religion of Islam. Now, after these first verses were revealed, Muhammad went from the mountain to his wife Khadijah. He was trembling, and she held him tightly when he told her what had happened in the cave. She said, "You are a good man, and I believe and trust you." Khadijah was Muhammad's first convert to Islam, and his 10-year-old cousin Ali was the second. Abu Bakr, Muhammad's closest friend, the third, and Zayd, a freed slave, was the fourth. And from then on, the voice of Islam rang louder and louder as Muhammad proclaimed the message of God, preaching the existence of only one God, the importance of equality for all people, and the necessity of freedom of thought and speech. The angel Gabriel appeared again and again to Muhammad, delivering more and more of the sacred word of God. Muhammad memorized the words and had scribes write them down. After 23 years, the Quran was complete. Your God is one God. There is no God but me, the all-merciful, the all-compassionate. Behold, in the creation of the heavens and the earth, in the alternation of night and day, in the sailing of ships through the ocean, for the profit of mankind, in the rain which God sends down from the skies and the life he gives therewith to an earth that is dead, in the creatures of all kinds that he causes to multiply through the earth, in the changes of the winds and the clouds which run their appointed courses between sky and earth. In all this are signs indeed for people who use their reason. That is out of the Quran. Now at this time, the various tribes of Mecca believed in many different gods and worshipped hundreds of idols. Their finest place of worship was a sacred shrine of Kaaba, a square structure with a black meteorite set into the lower eastern corner. It was believed that the meteorite had fallen from heaven as a sign of the first covenant between God and man. Muhammad felt that the Quraysh leader of the Meccan tribes had forgotten the truth behind the first covenant between God and men, that men were supposed to worship not too many gods, but only one God. But the Quraysh had grown rich, creating new deities and idols for their people to worship, and were not easily convinced by Muhammad's proclamations and felt threatened by Islam. They began a persecution of Muhammad's followers, some of whom fled to the protection of the Christian king in Ethiopia. Now, Muhammad knew the path before him would be hard, but its direction was clear. He continued to share the words of the Quran, and over time, more and more people joined the Prophet. People accepted Islam because Muhammad taught God's words that said that all men and women, black, white, rich, poor, must be treated with dignity and respect. Some of the nobles balked at the idea of treating the weak and unprotected with justice. They challenged Muhammad to produce miracles as if he was a real prophet. "I am only a human being like yourselves," he said. "My miracle is the Quran." Umar, a fierce and feared tribal leader, charged through the streets of Mecca with his sword drawn, looking for Muhammad. People retreated in alarm, but one man approached Umar, telling him to go to his sister's house before trying to kill Muhammad. As soon as he entered his sister's house, Umar heard verses from the Quran being recited, and as he listened, his heart softened, and that fearless warrior actually began to cry, and he found Muhammad, and he accepted Islam. Now, on a night in the year 620, shortly after Khadijah died, Gabriel appeared to Muhammad to prepare him for a night journey through paradise that came to be known as the Ascension or the Miraj. And remember, we talked about that with Christ as well, Jesus Christ, when he had the Ascension. Muhammad mounted a divine creature called Burak and rode from Mecca to Jerusalem, where he led the prophets Abraham, Moses, and Jesus in prayer. Muhammad traveled with the angels, ascending through the heavens until he reached the seventh heaven, where he was brought into the light of God's presence himself. Muhammad was shown a window into heaven and instructed to have his followers make 5 daily prayers. And then he returned to Mecca, where he shared his incredible story with his followers. The Quraysh leaders continued their efforts to crush Islam by threats, stonings, beatings, and all forms of persecution. They even plotted against Muhammad's life. In the year 622, Muhammad received a message from God to leave Mecca and journey to Yathrib, which was renamed Medina, where Islam would be welcomed. Muhammad and his followers began their great flight, or hijrah, at night, leaving Mecca on camels or horses and by foot. The Quraysh learned of the hijrah and set soldiers upon Muhammad with swords. Protected by God from being seen and heard, Muhammad managed to escape unharmed. And remember, Mecca and to Medina. Later that night, Muhammad and his friend Abu Bakr hid in a cave. God caused a spider's web to be spun over the entrance to the cave, and a dove to make a nest near the cave opening. And when they saw the unbroken spider's web and the dove on her nest, the Quraysh soldiers turned away from the cave. Though they searched far and wide, the soldiers could not find Muhammad and Abu Bakr. In this, they were saved. The children of Medina sang a song, welcome from atop palm trees and along the streets. Everyone wished for the Prophet to stay in their home, so to be fair, Muhammad let his camel decide where they would rest, and the camel stopped before a humble home belonging to Abu Ayyub Ansari, and that is where Muhammad stayed. Straight away, Muhammad began to build the simple mosque of Medina, next to which he would live the rest of his life. The faithful, the Muslims, were unsure of how to call people to prayer in the new mosque. The Christians used a bell and the Jews blew a ram's horn, but what should the Muslims use? A drum was suggested, but Muhammad rejected it as it was too warlike. God inspired him to use the human voice to announce the hour of prayer. The Prophet asked Bilal, a former Abyssinian slave, to call, Allahu Akbar, God is greater. Allahu Akbar, I bear witness. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, I bear witness that there is no God but God. I bear witness that Muhammad is the messenger of God. Come to prayer. Come to prayer, come to salvation, come to salvation. Allahu Akbar, there is no God but God. And this is something that the Muezzin does 5 times a day to call you to prayer. They sing this. After the Muslims were called to prayer, Muhammad mounted the minbar to give his first sermon in Medina. He said, every Muslim is a brother of every other Muslim. This is the teaching of Islam. Because the Muhajirun, or refugees from Mecca, had no belongings, Muhammad declared that each Medinite man would give half of whatever he had to a Meccan man, thus creating an inseparable bond of brotherhood. And another out of the Quran. They are righteous who believe in God, who donate goods and money, for love of God to relatives and orphans, and to the poor and the wayfarer, and to the needy, and who are in constant prayer and give alms for welfare, and those who fulfill their promises when they make them, and who are patient in suffering, adversity, and hard times. They are the truthful ones, and they are the compassionate. In the year 624, Muhammad, followed by his standard bearers, led 300 Muslims against 1,000 Quraysh raiders in the Battle of Badr, and won more converts to Islam, believing that their victory was due to God's divine intervention. The Muslims were strengthened, they won the respect of their enemies, and Muhammad became not only the leader of the Islamic faith, but also the head of the State of Islam. And while the Jewish tribe at Banu Qurayza lived peacefully in Medina with the Muslims, other Jewish tribes felt threatened by Muhammad and the rise of Islam. Jewish agents from Khaybar were sent all over Arabia to unite the local tribes against Islam. In the year 627, 10,000 Arab warriors converged upon Medina in what became known as the Battle of the Trench. Muhammad ordered a huge trench to be dug around Medina. Sounds a little like Caesar. The allied tribes could not cross the trench, and so laid siege outside the city for 26 days. On the 27th day, a tremendous cyclone struck the allied tribes' camps, thus ending the siege. Muslims believe God had once again helped Islam prevail, and Muhammad sent letters to the kings of Ethiopia, Persia, Yemen, and the Emperor Heraclius of Byzantium, inviting them to accept Islam. In the year 628, Muhammad led 1,400 followers back into Mecca in the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. Muhammad came to a 10-year truce with the Quraysh, who agreed to recognize Muhammad's right to speak without hindrance and allow him to make a pilgrimage to the Kaaba. So many new converts joined Islam that by January in the year 630, when the Quraysh broke the treaty, Muhammad was able to ride into Mecca with 10,000 men and take the city without a fight. On camelback, Muhammad circled the Kaaba 7 times, ordering that all idols be destroyed. He rededicated the Kaaba shrine to God, and the Islamic call to prayer was soon heard throughout all of Mecca. He met with and forgave even his bitterest enemies, many who had accepted Islam. In the year 631, called the Year of Embassies, Muhammad succeeded in uniting feuding Arab tribes into a brotherhood called the Ummah. Islam was accepted by the Arabian tribes. Muhammad tried to be a magnanimous victor, setting a model of leniency for all future Islamic conquerors, reminding his followers of the importance of compassion and brotherhood. He granted religious tolerance to Christian and Jewish people who paid a tax or tribute. The biblical prophets from Abraham to Jesus Christ were honored by Islam as prophets, and the Jewish scriptures and the words of Jesus were respected. But the revelations of Muhammad, preserved in the Quran and the prophets sang in less sacred writings called the Sunnah, represented to the followers the final expression of the will of God, who is one being, not a trinity. The Quran and the Sunnah became guides that provided a model of ideal moral and social behavior to be followed by every Muslim. True believers were to honor their parents, treat women with kindness, help the poor, protect orphans, and be honorable, and just in all personal and professional matters. Followers to avoid alcohol, pork, and gambling, and be humble before God. Such would enable followers to enjoy the delights of heaven after their death. Muhammad did not institute an organized priesthood, altars, or sacraments. He prescribed several key observances which are known as the 5 pillars of Islam, and we will learn about those. Bearing witness, or shahada. Muslims declare acceptance of one God, Allah, and Muhammad as his prophet. So we'll go over these a different day, but it's prayer, salat, 5 times a day. Almsgiving, zakat, you give some of your wealth every year away. Fasting, swam, you go on Ramadan, which starts next Thursday. You fast whenever the sun is out. So you have no water, no food, the entire time that the sun is up, or even showing at all. Pilgrimage, the Hajj. Every Muslim must need to go to Mecca, and that's called the Hajj. Muhammad preached his final revelations in the valley of Arafat outside Medina in the year 632. Thousands and thousands of followers were gathered to hear the prophet. Sitting atop a camel, Muhammad recited the final verse of the Quran, saying, "Today I have perfected your faith and completed my best blessings on you and chosen Islam as your religion. Let there be no compulsion in religion. Truth stands out clear henceforth from error." Muhammad made a final pilgrimage to Mecca and then returned to Medina. He distributed his worldly possessions to the poor, reminded his followers that the faithful would follow him, and 3 months later, Muhammad passed away peacefully. To the waiting multitude, Muhammad's great friend Abu Bakr declared, "It's you. If you worship Muhammad, Muhammad is dead. But if you worship God, God is living, eternal, and immortal." When a person dies, his deeds come to an end, except in respect of 3 matters, which he leaves behind: a continuing charity, knowledge from which benefit can be derived, and righteous children who will pray for him.